Hello and welcome back to another lecture. In this lecture, we will create the 4 security groups that we need for this application. The first security group that we will create will be assigned to the application load balancer, and it is only going to allow internet traffic on port 80 and port 443. The second security group will be assigned to the Bastion host to SSH into our instance in the private subnet. And this security group will only allow traffic on port 22 from our IP address. The third security group that we will create will be assigned to our web servers in the private subnet. And this security group will only allow traffic on port 22 from our Bastion host, and it will also allow traffic on port 80 and port 443 from our application load balancer. The last security group that we will create will be assigned to our database instance, and it will only allow traffic on port 3306 from our web servers. To start, I have created a reference file for you. Download it in the description so you can follow along. In this reference file that I call securitygroup_reference.tf, I have listed all the steps that we will use to create our security groups. The first security group we are going to create is for our application load balancer. And the next security group we will create is for our Bastion host. Then the third security group is going to be for our web server. And we are going to create the last security group for our database. The next thing I want you to do is open your project folder. So remember to open your project folder, you can select this here and select open folder and browse to the location of your project folder. Mine is the Terraform projects. I'll select it. And in that folder, I have the e-commerce website folder. That is the folder for our project. I'll select it, then click select folder. And it is going to open your project folder for you. You can see the e-commerce website folder up here, and you can see all the files we have created so far. The next thing we are going to do is create a Terraform file for our security groups. So on this space right here, I'm going to right click, select new file, and call it securitygroup.tf. And once you type the name, press enter. You can see our securitygroup.tf file, and we are currently in it. The next thing I'm going to do is close this get started because I don't need it. And I want you to open your reference file again. And once you open your reference file, scroll all the way to the bottom. At the bottom, start here and select all these resources. I'm going to select everything, right click to copy it, then come back to your security group file and paste it in there. And once you've pasted in there, scroll up. And we are going to fill in all the values for our security group resources. The next thing I'm going to do is close this reference file because I don't need it anymore. Just like we have done before, this is the note for the type of resource that this syntax will create. And if you want to find the location of that syntax in the Terraform documentation, you are going to copy this and open Google and paste it in there and press enter. Under your search results, select the first option. And it is going to take you to the exact location of that syntax in the Terraform documentation. If I scroll down, you can see the syntax to create a security group here. So I'm going to minimize this. The first security group that we will create is the security group that we would assign to our application load balancer. And this security group will allow traffic on port 80 and port 443. So for the argument name, we are going to give it a name. I'll call it ALB security group. Once you've entered the name for your security group, the next argument we are going to enter is the description. The description can be anything you want it to be. It is just an information on what this security group will be doing. So for my description, I will enter something like this. Once you've entered your description, the next argument we are going to enter is our VPC ID. So to get our VPC ID, we can just come to our VPC file. And in there, we should find a resource in there that has our VPC ID. You can see under our private subnet 3, we have the VPC ID. So I'll just copy this and come back to my security group file. And I'm just going to paste it there. The next argument we are going to enter is for our ingress rule. And as you can see, we have two ingress rule here, and both ingress rule has the same arguments. This is because we are going to be creating two rules, one on port 80 and the other on port 443. So the first ingress rule we are going to create is for port 80. So under description, we can just give it a description again. We'll call it HTTP access. And under the from port argument, we are going to enter 80. Under the to port, we are also going to enter 80. And under protocol, we are going to enter TCP. And under the CIDR blocks argument, the CIDR block for internet traffic is 0.0.0.0/0. So we are going to enter it like this. Start with a bracket, then double quotes, then type 0.0.0.0/0. So that is how we enter our traffic from anywhere. So we just create a rule for internet traffic on port 80. We are going to do the same thing for the next one, and we will create internet rule for port 443. So under description, we can call it HTTPS access. Under the from port, we are going to type 443. Under the to port, we are also going to type 443. Under the protocol, it is going to be TCP. And for CIDR blocks, it is also going to be anywhere. So we're just going to copy this and paste it down there. The next argument we are going to create is for the egress traffic. So for security group, remember that any traffic you allow in is also going to be allowed out. And if you look in the management console under your security group, you will notice that the egress traffic for your security group always allows all. And to enter that, the from port is going to be 0. The to port is going to be 0. The protocol, it is going to be -1. -1 is how you allow all traffic. And for the CIDR block, we are just going to copy this and paste it here. So it is internet traffic from anywhere. The next argument we are going to enter is our tags. We are going to give it a tag name, and for the value, we'll call it ALB security group. The next security group we are going to create is for our Bastion host. So you can see the resource type here, it is security group, and you can see the local name that I gave it, SSH security group. For the argument name, we'll call it SSH access. This is just a name I am giving the security group. You can call it any name you want. The next argument we are going to enter is the description. So for the description, I will enter something like this. The next argument we are going to enter is our VPC ID. So I'll scroll up. I'll just copy my VPC ID here, copy it, and come down and paste it there. Next, we are going to enter the ingress rule for our security group. So for the description, we can call it SSH access again. And for the from port, it is going to be 22. For the to port, it is also going to be 22. The protocol, it is going to be TCP. And for the CIDR blocks argument, this is going to be the IP address that can SSH into your EC2 instance. And remember, for AWS best practice, you should always limit this IP to your IP address. But for this lecture, we are going to leave it at anywhere. But when you use this in a production environment, make sure you only limit this to your IP. To enter the CIDR blocks for our SSH security group, let's create a variable for it. So I'll come to the variable file and I'm just going to copy this variable and I'll come down and I'm going to paste it there. And the next thing I'm going to do is modify it. So I'm going to change this variable name. I'll call it SSH location. And for the default value argument, I'm going to put it at anywhere, but make sure in your production environment, make sure to always limit it to your IP address. And next, I'm going to modify the description. I'll delete this and I'll type something like this. For the type argument, it is going to be a string. And this is all we need to do to create our variable. Come back to your security group file. And under CIDR blocks, we are going to enter that variable. So start with a bracket and double quotes, $, and call it brackets. Then type var dot the name of your variable. So if I come back to my variable, the name of my variable is SSH location. I'll copy it, come back here and paste it in there. So that is how you reference your variable. The next argument we are going to enter is for our egress traffic. Remember, for your security group, any traffic you allow in is also allow out. So for this egress, we are going to enter the same thing we entered up here. So the from port is going to be 0. The to port is going to be 0. The protocol is going to be -1. And the CIDR block is going to be 0.0.0.0/0. So enter your brackets, double quotes, and type anywhere. The next argument we are going to enter is the tags. We'll give it a name, and the value we'll call it SSH security group. And that's all we need to do to create our SSH security group. The next security group we are going to create is for our web server. Again, we are going to do the same. We are going to give it a name. For the name argument, you can call it anything you want. I'll call it web server security group. And for the description argument, I'm going to enter something like this. The next argument we are going to enter is our VPC ID. So again, I can scroll up, copy the VPC ID up here. I'm going to copy it. And before I copy my VPC ID, I just noticed something. For your -1 here, make sure it is in double quotes. So I'm going to put a quote around it. For the -1, make sure it is in double quotes. Then I'm going to scroll down. And I'm going to paste my VPC ID in there. The next argument we are going to enter is for our ingress rule. Remember, we want to allow 3 rules on port 80, port 443, and on port 22. So we are going to enter the first rule, which is on port 80. Under description, we can type HTTP access. Under from ports, we are going to enter 80. Under the 2 port, we are also going to enter 80. For the protocol, it is going to be TCP. And the next argument is security groups. Notice the difference that now I have security groups in here instead of CIDR blocks. That is because we are only going to allow internet traffic coming from our application load balancer. So here, to allow traffic coming from your application load balancer security group, you are going to enter it like this. Enter bracket, double quote, $, then enter the curly brackets, then scroll up to your application load balancer security group. The application load balancer security group is here. I'm going to copy the resource type and the local name. Copy it. Then let's come back down. And in that curly bracket, paste it in there. Then remove the double quotes between them. Add a period. Then go all the way to the end. After the group, add another period and type ID. And that is how you reference that application load balancer security group. By entering it this way, we are saying that we are only going to allow traffic on port 80 if that traffic is coming from our application load balancer security group. That's what this means. The next argument we are going to enter is for our port 443 rule. So under the description argument, we are going to type HTTPS access. For the front port, we are going to type 443. The 2 port, we are going to type 443. And the protocol, it is going to be TCP. Under the security group, we are just going to copy this and paste it here. The next rule we are going to create is for our SSH access. So under description, type SSH access. And for the front port, we are going to enter 22. For the 2 port, we are going to enter 22. For the protocol, it is going to be TCP. And for the security groups argument, we are going to do something similar to what we did up here. Remember, for the SSH rule, we only want to allow SSH traffic if that traffic is coming from our SSH security group. We created the SSH security group up here. So the SSH security group is right here. So what I'll do is I'll copy the resource type and the local name, copy it, and come back down. And in here, first we are going to enter our bracket with the double quote, the $, and the curly bracket. So I'll enter that. And once you enter that, I'm going to paste it in there. Then remove this double quotes, add a period, then go all the way to the end, add another period, and type ID. And this is all we need to do to create our web server security group. For the egress rule, it is going to be similar to what we did up there. The front port is going to be 0. The 2 port is going to be 0. The protocol, it is going to be -1. Remember to put it in a double quote, -1. And the CIDR block is going to be anywhere. So in a bracket, type anywhere. And for the next argument, we are going to give it a tag name and we'll call it Web Server Security Group. And the last security group we are going to create is going to be assigned to our database. So under the name argument, let's enter database security group. And under the description argument, we are going to enter something like this. For the VPC ID, I'm going to go up and I'm just going to copy this and come back down and paste it there. And for the ingress rule, under the description argument, we are going to enter something like this. For the front port, it is going to be 3306. The to port is also going to be 3306. The protocol is going to be TCP. And under security groups argument, remember that our database will only allow traffic coming from our web server. So for this security group, we are going to enter the security group that we assign to our web server. So just come up here. We are going to copy the resource type and the local name for our web server security group. Copy it, then come back down, and you are going to enter it the same way we did this one. So come down here, and we are going to start with the bracket, then double quotes, $, curly brackets, and paste what you copied in there. Then remove this double quotes, add a period, go all the way to the end, add another period, and type ID. And that's all you need to do for this rule. For egress, it is the same as what we've been doing. The front port is going to be 0. The to port is going to be 0. The protocol is going to be -1. And the CIDR block is going to be anywhere. And the last argument we need to enter is our tags. We'll give it a name and we'll call it database security group. And once you enter your tag name, we are done creating our file. Scroll all the way up. And we are going to save our file. Select File and select Save All. Once you've saved your file, the next thing we are going to do is open the terminal. So select Terminal and select New Terminal. The first thing we are going to type is Terraform plan just to see the plan. Once you type Terraform plan, press Enter. And there you go. It is showing you the Terraform plan. It is going to create 25 resources. It is not going to delete any or change any resource. And if you scroll up, you can see all the resources that Terraform will create. I'm going to go down. And now I'm going to type Terraform apply. Once you type Terraform apply, press Enter. And again, it is showing you the plan and it is asking you, do you want it to perform these actions? We are going to type yes and press Enter. And now Terraform is creating all the resources in my file. I'm going to give it some time to finish creating the resources. Then we are going to review the security group resources we just created in the management console. While Terraform is creating the resources in my security group file, it has found an error and it is saying invalid security group description. And this is where the security group is. So it is my database security group. It is also telling me it is on line 108. So let's go back there and see. You probably don't have this error on your template, but let me just check mine. So my database security group description. And this is my database security group. Under description, I can already see the error. I accidentally type a question mark. So I'm going to remove that. And once I remove the question mark, I'm going to select file and I'm going to save all. Then I'm going to come back to my terminal and I'm going to type Terraform apply again. Or you can press the up arrow key and it is going to bring back the last command you typed. I'll press enter. And Terraform is showing me the plan. And according to the plan, it is going to create one resource. And that resource is this database security group that failed. So I'm going to type yes and press enter. And there you go. Terraform has created all the resources in my security group file. Let's verify the security group in the management console. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to come to my management console and I'm going to select services. Now I'll come down to networking and content delivery, select VPC. On the VPC dashboard, scroll down to security groups, select it. And let's filter this by just our test VPC. So I'll go back up and under filter by VPC, select the test VPC or whatever you called your VPC. Now I'm only seeing the security group in this VPC. Let's start reviewing this security group from top to bottom. I'm going to expand this. You can see that the first security group at the top is our database security group. If I select it and I'm going to select inbound rule, you can see the inbound rule, it is TCP on port 3306 and the source is only allowing traffic from our web server security group. So that is correct. Let's review our SSH security group. The inbound rule for our SSH security group is also TCP on port 22 and the source that I currently have there now is anywhere. But remember what I said, according to AWS security best practice, you should always limit this to your IP address. The next security group you are seeing is the default security group that was created when we create this VPC. So we are just going to ignore that. The next security group is our web server security group. And you can see in our web server security group, we have 3 rules. The first rule is on port 80. And you can see the source of that traffic is coming from our application load balancer security group. The second rule is on port 22. And you can see the source of that rule is coming from our SSH security group. The last rule is on port 443. And you can see that the source of that rule is coming from our application load balancer security group. So here you can see the security group IDs. And you can see that this security group ID is the same as this. So let's check out the last security group, which is our application load balancer security group. The inbound rule, we have port 80 and port 443, and the traffic is coming from anywhere. So we have set up everything correctly and we can verify it in the management console. Now that we have verified the resource in the management console, the next thing we can do is delete the resource. So let's go back to our Terraform file. In my Terraform file, I'm going to type Terraform destroy in the terminal. And once you type Terraform destroy, press enter. And there you go. Before Terraform does anything, it is going to show you the plan and it is going to ask you that do you want to continue. You can see according to the plan, it is going to remove 25 resources. I want to apply this change, So I'm going to type yes and press enter. And there you go. Terraform is now removing all the resources from my AWS environment. I'm going to give it some time to finish doing that. And there you go. After waiting some time, Terraform has deleted all the resources from my AWS environment. If I go back to the management console and I'm going to refresh, and you can see that the security group is gone. If I try to filter by VPC, you can see that my test VPC is not in there anymore. And this is how you use Terraform to create security groups in your AWS environment. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.